All right, good afternoon. The Secretary General is in Bern, Switzerland today, where he met with the Swiss Foreign Minister, Didier Buchhalter, with whom he discussed conflict prevention, as well as the situations in Syria and countries threatened by famine, among other topics. They just concluded a joint press encounter, and we're transcribing it as we speak. Later this afternoon, the Secretary General is expected to meet with the leadership of the External Relations Committee of both chambers of the Swiss Parliament, and then he will be hosted for an official dinner by the President of the Swiss Confederation, Doris Leuthard. And as we had announced last week, the Secretary General will preside over the high-level pledging event for the humanitarian crisis in Yemen tomorrow in Geneva. And that is, he will be hosting that jointly with the foreign ministers of Switzerland and Sweden as co-chairs. According to our colleagues in the Office for the Humanitarian Affairs, Yemen is the largest humanitarian crisis in the world, with nearly 19 million people, or two-thirds of the population, in need of aid. Nearly half of these people require immediate assistance to save their lives or sustain their lives. Yemen is also the largest food insecurity emergency in the world and on the brink of a famine. More than 17 million people are currently food insecure, including about 7 million people who are severely food insecure and face starvation. More information online and in the press release that was press advisory that was issued by OCHA. Turning to Syria, I wanted to say that we are deeply concerned for the safety and protection of over 400,000 people in Iraq and Syria. In past weeks, civilians have been exposed to daily fighting and airstrikes, which resulted in an escalating number of civilian deaths and injuries, as well as damage to civilian infrastructure, including hospitals, schools, markets, and water infrastructure. Yesterday, airstrikes in Atabaka city reportedly killed 8 people, including 5 children, and damaged 2 schools. On the 22nd of April, dozens of people were reportedly killed and injured in airstrikes on camps for internally displaced people near Al-Barda village, about 20 kilometers west of Raqqa. And some 39,000 displaced people fled to Jib al-Sher makeshift camp near Raqqa governorate, where 4 out of 5 people are staying in the open air without appropriate shelter. The UN has also received reports of the deaths of several children due to lack of medical care in Jib al-Sher and al-Karma camps, and out of critically injured people and sick children who are also in need of urgent medical assistance. And from Iraq, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that as the fighting continues in West Mosul, the number of people fleeing the area is surging. Nearly 376,000 people have now been displaced from West Mosul since the start of the military operations in February. Yesterday alone, another 6,500 people were recorded as having arrived at the transit and screening points of Hammam al-Alil, south of Mosul. Despite very rapid displacement and pressures on the capacities of camps and emergency sites, space is currently available to accommodate a further 50,000 people. More expansion work in these camps is ongoing. And from Kabul, a report released today by the UN Assistance Mission in Afghanistan and its Human Rights Office found that detainees in Afghanistan continue to face torture and ill treatment in government detention facilities. The report is based on interviews with conflict-related detainees in 62 detention facilities and contain key recommendations to the government. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Zaid Rad al-Hussein, said it is essential that there is proper monitoring of detention facilities and meaningful investigations to ensure that those accused of torture are held accountable. And from South Sudan, the Human Rights Director in the UN mission there said that the lack of accountability for crimes perpetrated during the conflict remains one of the country's biggest challenges. Eugene Nindorera was speaking yesterday at the end of a visit to Wau in the northwest of South Sudan, where violence earlier this month led to the deaths of at least 28 civilians and 19 government soldiers. He said that as of Sunday, nobody was being detained in connection with the attacks on civilians. Meanwhile, the UN mission said that by Thursday of last week, the protection of civilian sites adjacent to the UN base in Wau had registered some 17,000 new arrivals, and those are mainly women and children. And more than 25 million children between ages 6 and 15, or 22% of children of age group, are missing out on school in conflict zones across 22 countries. And that's according to a UNICEF report issued today. At the primary school level, South Sudan had the highest rate of out-of-school children, with close to 72% of children missing out on an education, and that's followed by Chad and Afghanistan. The three countries also have the highest rate of girls who are out of school, and at the lower and secondary school level, the highest rates are found in Niger, South Sudan, and the Central African Republic. More information on UNICEF's website. And our friends at UNCTAD and their partners revealed today in a report that lack of trust is the main reason many internet users are not shopping online. The survey shows that users are increasingly worried about their privacy. The top source of concern were cyber criminals, internet companies, and governments. UNCTAD said the resulting impact on trust is hindering further development of the digital economy. And just to flag a couple of things from over the weekend, as you will recall, the Secretary General was in Washington for the spring meetings still on Saturday. In the morning, he spoke at the opening of plenary of the 35th meeting of the International Monetary and Financial Committee. And in the afternoon, he addressed a high-level meeting on famine and fragility. He also signed a partnership framework with World Bank President Jim Young Kim, which focuses on building resilience for the most vulnerable people by reducing poverty, promoting shared prosperity, enhancing food security, and sustaining peace in crisis-affected situations. We distributed that agreement, and more information is online. And last night, before leaving for Switzerland, the Secretary General delivered remarks at the opening dinner of the 15th Plenary Assembly of the World Jewish Congress. He said that while we would have hoped that the horrors and shock of the Holocaust would put an end to anti-Semitism, unfortunately it is not the case, and anti-Semitism is alive and well, he said. In a world with the multiplication of forms of populism, xenophobia, and hatred, the Secretary General said that anti-Semitism has gained an intensity that is unacceptable and that we need to fight with strong determination. He said that as Secretary General, he would be on the front lines in the struggle against anti-Semitism to make sure it is condemned and eradicated. He added that a modern form of anti-Semitism is the denial of the right of the State of Israel to exist, noting that Israel has an undeniable right to exist and to live in peace and security with its neighbors. And he reiterated his support for the two-state solutions. And in a letter sent to staff on Friday, the Secretary General thanked them for their commitment and hard work for providing an update on the ongoing management reform initiatives. The Secretary General said he is requesting that all managers give considerable thought on how their programs are being carried out and whether these mandates can be done better and with less cost. He encourages all staff to be a full part of this effort and share their cost savings ideas with their managers. Similarly, he counts on support of all staff for efforts to be more prudent in expenditures, more responsive to mandates originating from legislative bodies, and more effective in the delivery of programs. He said he is determined to work with all staff to ensure that we deliver results with efficiency and effectiveness, and that he is committed to ensuring that the voices of staff are heard. And a sad note, we are deeply saddened to learn of the passing of Michael Williams yesterday in the United Kingdom. Some of you may recall Lord Williams served as the UN Special Coordinator for Lebanon until his retirement from the UN in 2011. He had previously also served as the Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process and the Secretary General's Special Advisor on the situation in the Middle East, and had been Director in the Department of Political Affairs. He'd also served on UN missions in Cambodia and the former Yugoslavia. Michael's strong and enduring commitment to peace and security and stability of Lebanon and the wider Middle East will always be remembered. Many of us work closely with him and remember his kindness, warmth, and generosity, and we extend our condolences to his wife and children. And tomorrow at 11 a.m., there'll be a briefing here by Evo Morales, the president of Bolivia, and that's pegged to the Permanent Indigenous Peoples Forum. And closer to that, today at 1:15, there will be a briefing here on the 10th anniversary of the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Speakers will include the chair of the Permanent Forum from Mali, the Minister of Labor and Social Welfare from Guatemala, and Chief Willie Littlechild, Grand Chief of Treaty Number 6 from Canada, and the permanent forum meetings are going on in the GA as we speak. John Ging was supposed to join us today, but he will now brief us some point in the coming days. And lastly, we thank Ankara, which has paid its regular budget dues in full, bringing us up to 88. Edie Lederer.
Thank you, Stefan. I wonder whether you got any better readout from the Secretary General's meeting with the President National Security Advisor, particularly on the issue of U.S. funding to the United Nations. Did the Secretary General come out of those meetings feeling any better about prospects for U.S. funding?
I think the funding and the budgetary process in the U.S. is still ongoing. As we know, there are negotiations and discussions going on in the Congress according to the constitutional issues in this country. I spoke briefly to the Secretary General on Friday afternoon. He was very pleased with his meeting, very pleased with the brief discussion he had with President Trump, and as he said, he very much looks forward to seeing him again in the near future. Yep, go ahead. I'll come back to you, Matthew.
Thank you. My question is on Cyprus. There were some media reports in Greek media saying that the Greek foreign minister sent a letter to the Secretary General accusing the special advisor of lobbying for the Turkish side instead of acting like a UN mediator. Would you confirm that the Secretary General received a letter sent by the Greek foreign minister, and what is the response?
I'll check. I haven't seen the letter, but we have full confidence in Mr. Aide and the fact that he is very much doing his work as a UN, as a special advisor, and doing a very good job. Mr. Lee.
Sure, thanks a lot. Some other ones. I want to follow up on the Washington or Secretary General. I saw that he did an interview with Bloomberg Television, and he said that, for example, climate change didn't come up. So I just wanted to ask you, it seems like he didn't have any aversion to doing a kind of a readout in that interview. So can you give what did come up and what didn't come up?
I can't go any further than what I've said to you and what the Secretary General said publicly.
And I guess on one of the topics, he said that Syria did come up. So just as a matter of, I guess, transparency, I wanted to ask, I'm sure you've seen the stories that say that the Secretary General wired a congratulatory cable to President Assad of Syria. Is that true? And if so, is the text thus far quoted by Sana'a accurate and complete? And will you release the letter?
It was not a letter, a personalized letter that was signed. As a matter of practice that has been going on for decades in this organization, there is a message that goes out to every member state on the occasion of their National Day. It is the same message that goes out. So in 2017, there's a message that will go out. The same message will go out to every member state. There's no reason why we can't release the text of this generic letter. It goes out through our protocol service to the permanent mission. As I said, it's not a signed letter. It's a generic message. And I think it is about peace, and I think no one would disagree that after more than 6 years of conflict, I think the Syrian people deserve peace.
So they're not tailored in any way. It's not.
They're not tailored.
Not complete...
as I said, I'll release.
Okay.
We'll send out. It's a generic letter. It goes out the same to everybody. Masoud.
Thank you, Stefan. Stefan, on this Yemen, which has been termed as one of the worst humanitarian or the hunger crashes in the world at this time. Can the Secretary General, I'm just asking, will the Secretary General at any point in time ask these rich coalition partners who are involved in attacking, Yemen because of their differences with the present new regime, Houthis and so forth, will they ask them to pay for these the humanitarian crisis that has been created as a consequence of their actions?
Well, I think you should look at we can give you a breakdown of who has given to the UN, to the Yemen, to the UN humanitarian appeal. We would obviously expect every member state that can to participate in as much as possible. Yep.
Thank you. As you might have seen, Stefan, Morocco and Cuba have signed on Friday in New York an agreement reestablishing their ties, which were cut since, I think, 1980. Does the Secretary General have any comment on that? And secondly, do you think that this move could contribute in improving ties between maybe Latin America and Africa, where Morocco is one of the major players?
I hadn't seen the report. I'm not going to speculate what the impact will be, but obviously, as a matter of principle, we would like to see member states have diplomatic relations. So the more countries sign and recognize and have diplomatic relations, the happier we are. Linda. And then,
Thank you, Steph. Following up on the Secretary General's visit with President Trump, you mentioned at the end that the SG looks forward to seeing Trump in the near future. I was wondering if that means that, like a general sense of, oh, yes, I hope to meet him again in the future, or was it a more specific mention between the two men?
no, I think
that
there
they
was
plan to
there
meet?
was the president invited the Secretary General to come back to Washington in the near future. So I mean we're interpreting the words in their literal meanings. Okay, Herman and then Matt.
DRC National Authority released a video today regarding two UN experts who has been killed recently. Did you watch the video? Could you confirm if it's related to those experts?
Well, we believe that the video that was shown of relating to the death of our two colleagues is authentic. I won't tell you that we're not disappointed. We're disappointed that the video was shown publicly. I think it does it does harm, I think, to the ongoing investigation, and one can only imagine how traumatic it is to the families of the victims.
Who killed
No, I mean, there's an ongoing investigation, and the DRC authorities have the obligation to conduct a thorough and impartial criminal investigation. The video is evidence in the crime. We don't think it should have been released. We don't think it should have been shown. We have, at this point, we have no way. I mean, the investigation is ongoing, so I can't tell you we don't know who committed these crimes. Matthew.
Again, I'm sorry to follow up on that before something else is. You were asked on Friday about the video from Egypt of the army apparently executing people captured in the Sinai. And I'm wondering, have you had, in the time since Friday, has the UN have any more reaction to the video? And did you feel the same thing, that it shouldn't have been released, given that it shows the death of individuals and is, if true, a crime?
I have no further information on that on that video. As a matter of principles, I think videos showing killings of people should be handled delicately.
Right.
But I think what we're talking about here is the death of two staff members in the Congo who were on work for this organization, mandated by the Security Council, and we very much hope that the investigation will be carried out thoroughly. And when I have something else to tell you on Egypt, I will share with you.
And I want to ask you on Burundi. I'd asked you on Friday about the proposal, which is now to name Mr. Michel Kafando as an envoy to Burundi. You said you had no comment. Since then, the ambassador of Burundi has told me that the government supports the proposal. It seems like it's clearly a proposal. But what I wanted to ask you, and I'd like you, if not from this podium, before it's finalized, is it in fact a when actually employed part-time position that's being proposed? And if so, can you explain what I'm told, that DPA, when it informed council members of the proposal, didn't mention that it's part-time? So I think it's important to know what is the proposal.
I will try to find out more information. I have nothing from here. Masoud.
Thank you. Stefan, on this Afghanistan attack, which able to kill more people than mother of all bombs was unable to do, 140 people. Has the United Nations done any? Do you have any update on what is exactly happening at this point in time?
It was a tragic and horrendous attack on Afghan National Army soldiers. We have no investigation into the issue. We were not there. All we see is the tragedy that this attack sowed on these soldiers.
Has the Afghan government asked United Nations?
Not that I'm aware, but you could check with the mission, with the UN mission there. Yes, sir.
Sure. I wanted to ask you I did find what the head of UNOCA, Mr. Monseni Fall, said about the turning on of the internet in Cameroon. Some people found it strange that it ends with this urging to avoid using the internet to incite hatred or violence, which is exactly the reason that the government gave for turning it off for 94 days. And the government seems to have, even according to the Perm Rep here, to include any call for secession, even nonviolent referendum for secession, to be a call for violence
I think we're taking things one step at a time. I think we're encouraged that the internet was restored.
And I also wanted to ask you about Jeffrey Sachs again. I'm sorry to do it, but I saw over the weekend that you said that you haven't seen the quotes or you've now seen the quotes. But I wanted to ask you, is it appropriate for a UN official, even in the position that you've said, to render public endorsements in contested elections in the UN system? There's a candidate for the World Tourism Organization, candidate Do of South Korea, and there's an online report that Jeffrey Sachs issued an open letter saying this is the right person. So
I don't know. You could check with his office if that's
but I'm asking you what the UN rules about a UN special advisor.
We expect any UN staff member or special advisor to exercise judgment. I have no way of verifying what you're saying me is true. We can look into it. So I'm not commenting on this particular
Right, but would it be a failure of judgment to
I'm not going to – I'm telling you what our principal position is, and I'll try to find out what actually was said, if anything. Okay, thank you.